Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala khatim al-anbiya'i wa mursaleen. Nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Wa ba'd. All praises are due to Allah, Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon all of the righteous prophets, upon Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and all those who came from the beginning of time. I begin with the greeting words of the righteous. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, it's a great pleasure to be with you, and I pray that Allah would make you successful in your journey and would unite Muslims throughout the world. This is a very important time for Muslims in history. Allah has blessed us with some of the richest people on earth. He has also blessed us with large numbers. 26% of the earth's population are Muslims. We live in strategic positions throughout the planet. We have young people, we have intellectuals, we have books, plenty of books. So the Muslim world today has great potential. It has the ability to lead the world. At the same time, there is a contradiction. There's something which is not fully coming through. And that is that with the great riches, there is also poverty. There are many poor Muslims. With the large numbers, we are not getting the respect that we deserve in the world. With the great intellectuals and the books and things that we have, Muslim leaders or Muslim intellectuals, in many cases, spend more time debating than dealing with the world's issues. And so this is a contradiction. This is a point, as we have discussed in our previous session. This is a point where people need to, or Muslims need to reflect. We need to reflect upon ourselves and reflect upon those who came before us. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in His book in Surah Al-Hashr, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu attaqullah, wal tanzur nafsun ma qaddamat lighad, wattaqullah, inna Allaha khabirun bima ta'malun, wa la takunu kalladhina nasullaha fa ansahum anfusahum. Ulaika humul fasiqun. Allah tells us, O you who believe, have the consciousness of Allah, and let every soul look to what it put forward for tomorrow and fear Allah. Surely Allah is well aware of all that you do. And be not as those who forgot Allah, and so He made them forget themselves. Surely they are the disobedient ones. And so in this verse, Allah is saying, be not as those people who forgot themselves, forgot Allah. When they forgot Allah, He made them forget themselves. This is the key point we want to think about and discuss tonight in a historical sense. لا تكونوا كالذين نسوا الله فأنساهم أنفسهم. It's a very, very important point. Because we have so many people, we have so much wealth, but the wealth is not feeding the poor. The armies are not coming to liberate the oppressed. The intellectuals are not focusing on the proper issues. And so something is happening. Muslims need to look into themselves. We have to look into our lives. And one of the important ways to look into ourselves, to bring about change, is through the stories of those who came before us. Now people will say, why do you study history? Why would you study history? Why would you look at the people who came before you? It's like you're crying over spilled milk, they say. The milk is spilled. Why do you waste your time on history? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has revealed in the Quran, and when we look at the book of Allah Azza wa Jal, you see in the Quran 1/3 of the Quran is qasas. It is stories. 1/3 of the Quran is qasas. It tells us the stories of the prophets, the stories of the nations who came before, the stories of powerful, important individuals in a chapter called Surah Al-A'raf. The chapter called Al-A'raf, verse 136, Allah Azza wa Jal tells us, فَقْصُصِ الْقَصَصِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Tell them the stories in order that they would reflect. Tafakkur. They would think. They would reflect. In Surah Yusuf, it also tells us, and this is in the 111th verse in Surah Yusuf, it tells us, لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ إِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. In the stories of those who came before, there are lessons for ulul albab, those who reflect. So if you can go into history and you can reflect upon what happened in the past, then you can gain lessons for present day life. The scholars, when they look at this, because again the argument might come, well, why do you want to look at history? But when the scholars, when we talk about our situation with so much potential that we need change today, we want our societies to change. We want Islam to come back fully in the land. What Allah tells us, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change that which is in themselves. No change. How do you make the change? How do you change a society? What are the laws of change? There are certain natural laws that Allah Azza wa Jal has made in the universe. These things are called in Arabic tawabit. And these tawabit, these natural laws, govern the way we exist. For instance, when the scientists study, you study that what goes up comes down. You also study and you learn that water boils at 100 degrees. You will learn certain scientific principles and you will put that in your life. You learn that we naturally know if food for a certain period of time, we don't drink, then we will die. And so therefore, these are thawabit. And they don't change. Water boils at 100 degrees. If it changed, we would have some serious problems. But these are thawabit. So there are also laws or rules in the changing of societies. Rules in the rise and fall of civilization. And we gain these rules through the book of Allah and through the sayings of the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is a certain sunnah, you know we say Quran and sunnah, but that word sunnah is also used, it says sunnatullah. Sunnatullah is the way of Allah. It is the systems set up by Allah in the universe. And so therefore, in the next few sessions, we want to study certain aspects from history in order to gain knowledge from this and in order to benefit. This time we want to look at Islam in AlAndalus. And this is what is presently known as Portugal and Spain. Most of the Muslims in this part of the world, when you study the history of Islam, you usually study the history of what happened to the Muslims, of course, in the Arabian Peninsula, and then Syria, and Egypt, but then you go to Iraq, and then you've been India and Asia, you study the eastern side. But the western side also has a very important history. And the more we study Muslims in different parts of the world, you will gain benefit from their experiences and what happened to them in their struggles. So I want to take you through a journey to give you some of this history. It is a long history. It covers over 800 years. But I want to give you something of this history and then show you what has come out of the history itself. And then we can reflect upon some of the lessons that we learn from this history. This, of course, is Mecca and Medina And this map here, this chart, is showing you the spread of Islam on the western side. Again, you learn more about here, Syria, and then this is Iraq, that side. We want to look at this side. What happened to the Muslims on this side? And this is having a big influence on us today. We may not be aware of it, but what happened to the Muslims on the western side is having a very important influence today. It is reported that in the lifetime of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Roman Empire, which is called the Byzantine Romans, they were in this area, Romans, they controlled the whole Mediterranean. The Romans attacked the Muslims from the north. And so the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his followers, they left from Medina and they went north to a place called Tabuk. And they waited for the Romans. But Allah put fear in the hearts of the Romans, they never came. After the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Romans continued to come. And so the Muslims went north and they defeated the Romans in this area here. And they realized that the Romans were ruling their people with oppression. They were raising the taxes. They were making the people slaves. And so the people living under the Romans wanted to be free. And so, following the message of Islam, the Muslims began to free the people who were living under Roman rule. They freed the people here in Palestine. They went into Egypt, led by Sayyidina Amr ibn al-As radiallahu anh, and they opened up Egypt. And the Christian people in Egypt, called Coptic Christians, and another group of Christians who are called Aryans, Arisiyin, these people assisted the Muslims. And even the Orientalist scholars, the Western secular scholars will tell you that the Egyptian people themselves, the Coptic people, they fought with the Muslim against the Romans. And they opened up Egypt. Then they realized that the Romans were controlling the whole area here. So they began to go west. And a person by the name of Uqba ibn Nafi' radiallahu anh, he and other people, they continued to go west until they reached all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. And it is reported that Uqba, he rode his horse all the way to the Atlantic, here. He rode his horse to the Atlantic and looked across and said, if I knew that there was land across this ocean, I would take the message across. So he is a very important person to remember in your history. His name is Uqba ibn Nafi' radiallahu anh. He was Tabi, from the Tabi'in. He was a great Tabi'i scholar. Great leader. He established a city called Qayrawan. Now many of you have never heard of the city of Qayrawan before. But it was the western capital of Islam. It's a very important city to know about, and if you get a chance, even to journey to and to take a visit. Qayrawan was located in the desert. Again, to go back to our map, here is your Tunisia, present-day Tunisia, and Qayrawan was here in the desert. It was south because the Romans would attack from the north in their boats. And some of the people of the Berbers, the indigenous people of the north who had not accepted Islam, they would attack from the mountains. So Uqba set up his base in the desert, which was the natural place for the Muslims to be in the desert region. And this here is a picture of Qayrawan itself that I visited a few years ago. And it shows you the natural pools that the Muslims built all throughout the area. And this is the Masjid Uqba ibn Nafi', which is in Qayrawan itself. This is a very famous masjid. And this one became the seat of education and spiritual authority. It is in this masjid, and this is show you inside the masjid what it looks like. It is in this masjid that the great scholars of the Malikiya fiqh, the Maliki fiqh, it is from here that they established the rules of what is known as Maliki fiqh. This is the teachings of Malik ibn Anas. You can put that over here for me? Put the quote over here. The teachings of Malik ibn Anas, what is now known as Maliki fiqh. You know, you have Hanafi, Shafi'i, Hanbali, and Maliki, right? So Imam Malik was living in Medina, and his hadith, it was the first authentic book of hadith called Al-Muwatta. Before Bukhari, before Muslim, was Muwatta. Imam Malik was such a great teacher that one day it is reported that the leader of Mecca sent a student to Imam Malik. And Imam Malik, he usually didn't listen to the leaders. But he said, okay, what do you want? They said, this young boy, he is a good student. Can you take him? Imam Malik said, send him back. They said, please, Imam. It is the Amir who's sending the boy. So then Imam Malik said, he sat the boy down and he gave him an examination. He talked to him and he said, this boy has a future. Put him in my halaqa. Put him in my circle. And the boy became the best student of Imam Malik. You know what his name was? His name was Imam al-Shafi'i. Imam al-Shafi'i. That's where he comes from. He was the best student of Imam Malik, and he went on to improve his school of thought. He went to Imam Abu Hanifa, got teachings from there, and he made improvements to the fiqh. So the teachers of Islam, the imams, were actually teachers and students of each other. They were not different religions, like Protestant and Catholic. You know, in Christians, it's not like this. They were teachers and students of each other. So it is here in Qayrawan that the great leaders like Sahnun, rahimahullah, they put together the teachings of Imam Malik. It was in this capital called Qayrawan. Al-Mudawwana al-Kubra. These are the teachings of the great Imam which make up the Maliki thought. Islam began to spread. And it did not spread in the fighting. It actually spread through migration, through trade, wandering scholars, pious people. This is how Islam began to spread throughout the region. Also, people began to learn Arabic. And Arabic was not being learned only just to be an Arab. It was learned first for the Quran itself, for the sayings of the Prophet ﷺ, for Islamic knowledge, and then communications. It was the language of communication. The same way I communicate with you in English language. But are we from England? No, there may be one. I don't know if anybody's from England. No, but we speak English. It's all over the world. Arabic was similar. They call in French lingua franca. It becomes a language used by people in order to communicate. You see? Right. And a base language. So religion, trade, scholarship, all of this was moving through Arabic language. In the north, above North Africa, in what is now known as Portugal and Spain, it was called the Iberian Peninsula. The people were being ruled by a group called the Visigoths. And their leader, King Roderick, he was punishing the people. In Spain and Portugal, the Gothic people themselves, one of the main tribes was known as the Vandals. The Vandals. And the Vandals were a Germanic tribe. They were a very powerful tribe. And they helped to destroy the Roman Empire in Italy. Okay, and so the Vandals, they were the ones who were living in the area. So they called it Vandalusia. And later on it's called Andalusia. And the Muslims say AlAndalus. So it comes from Vandals. That's now Spain and Portugal. But you know, if you say Vandals in English, I know American English, if you say Zaid's house was vandalized last night, you know what that means? You might not know. This is my American sort of English. But when they say his house was vandalized, it means somebody robbed the house. But they're using the name of vandals. See? So, the people in Spain originally believed in one God. They were Unitarians. Because the teachings of one God had spread even in Europe itself. From long time back, from the time of the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD, there were believers in one God, Unitarians. The Jewish people also, after Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians, when they attacked Jerusalem, they escaped, and some of them went to Spain. So Jewish people were living in Spain also. Okay? But Roderick, when he took over, he was a Trinitarian. They believe in three: Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, right? These teachings originally came from the ancient Greeks, from Plato, who believed in this logos. He believed in the creator and the reason, you know, and the spirit. The ancient Egyptians had Horus, Isis, Osiris. The ancient Indians also had Trinity. This was a belief in many countries. So this Trinitarian belief came into Christianity in 325 AD at the Council of Nicaea. Okay? So amongst the Christians you have Unitarian Christians who believe in one God, and you have Trinitarians who believe in three, right? So Roderick himself, who was ruling, he believed in three. And this is a picture here taken from Cordoba, for the advanced students who are here. It's taken from Cordoba, from the cathedral in Cordoba, which used to be a masjid, and I'm going to show you. And now when the Christians took over, they put their graves inside the masjid. Now this is a strange thing for those of you who study signs and symbols. This is a Catholic grave, but look at the idols that are on the grave. You see, that's supposed to be a believer in one God, right? But look what he has. See Cupid? You know Cupid in Valentine's Day. Cupid is there, flying around. And then down here you have lions. And look here. There is a skull and crossbones. Does anybody know what the skull and crossbones stands for? Some of you know as pirates. Pirates, you know, Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Right? Or you see Blackbeard and Bluebeard. But you know what it also is? The skull and crossbone is a Freemasonic sign. You know Masons? No, not Jewish. It's Masons. This is a Mason sign. Why does a Mason sign, what does it have to do with a Catholic grave? You see how strange that is? So the Trinitarian belief was bringing in a lot of strange ideas. Very, very strange ideas. In 11, the leader of the Muslims, his name was Musa bin Nusayr. He was from Syria. He became a great leader there in North Africa. And one of the leaders, named Julian or Ilian, he was a Christian. He was living in a place called Ceuta or Ceuta, which is in now Morocco. He sent his daughter to study in Spain, and Roderick raped his daughter, and so he revenge. He was a Christian, but he was underneath the Muslims. So he went to Amir al-Mu'mineen Musa bin Nusayr, and he said, help me. This man, Roderick, he is torturing and killing Christians. He's killing the Jewish people. Can you help us? So Musa bin Nusayr sent his general, whose name was Tariq ibn Ziyad. Okay? He sent him across the Straits of Gibraltar. This picture here is actually taken from the Straits of Gibraltar. This is what it looks like. And Tariq ibn Ziyad crossed over the Straits. He had about 7,000 men. He needed help, and they sent 5, so he had about 12,000 men. When he reached on the other side, he came in confrontation with Roderick. Roderick had 100,000. So it was 100,000 Trinitarians versus 12,000 Muslims. Does that sound even? No. But if you are a believer, it's even. You understand this? If you believe in Allah, then it's even. Does anybody know why? Because you have angels, malaika, angels are with you. And also the power of Allah. You see? If you're a true believer, then 100,000 equals 12,000 is equal. That's pretty good odds. And Allah puts fear in the hearts of those who do evil things. See? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Tariq a great victory. He landed on a mountain. And this mountain was called Jabal Tariq. And today you call this Gibraltar. You see the name? Jabal Tariq. The mountain of Tariq. Now you say Gibraltar. You see it? Jabal Tariq, Gibraltar. This is how the name, this is where it came from. This is the rock of Gibraltar. This is where he landed. This is where Tariq landed. Right in front of this mountain. That's today. It's right on the coast, right at the tip of Spain, right before the Atlantic. You see? It's controlled by the British now, so it's still British territory. But it's Gibraltar. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave Tariq a great victory. He defeated Roderick. Tariq's troops, he went forward, and Tariq totally defeated Roderick, and Roderick disappeared. And Tariq continued to go north. Every place that Tariq went to, the people opened up their doors. Because they said, you know, you're a small number of people. He liberated the people. The people under Roderick, they were paying taxes, they were slaves, and Tariq said, now you are free. You don't have to become a Muslim. He did not force people to become Muslim. You're Christian, stay Christian. If you're Jewish, Jewish. We have no problem. All we want is justice. We want peace and justice in the land. No taxes. We want equality. People want to live like this. So they opened up their doors. So all the cities were opening up. Cordoba, Toledo, Seville. Major cities were opening up in Spain. Every place that he went. This is a picture from Cordoba itself today. And you can still see the buildings of the Muslims who were living there. Following this, Musa bin Nusayr himself, he went into Spain. He followed Tariq. And they conquered all the way through Spain until France. The whole country opened up their doors. And they opened up the whole country. And they were about to go across the Pyrenees mountains, and they were going to go all the way back, but they stopped. The Khalifa in Syria told them, stop, consolidate. So they stopped. And now the whole of Portugal and Spain was underneath Islam. This country, AlAndalus, which they called AlAndalus, it became a very rich place because there was freedom, there was respect, and so thousands of Christian people became Muslims. Thousands became Muslims. This is a very important point, that the majority of the people who accepted Islam, the majority of the Muslims in Spain were not from North Africa or Arabia. They were the Spanish people themselves who became Muslims. It's a very important point. Okay? Now, the thousands of people came in and they became Muslim. Following this, a great leader came whose name was Abdurrahman ad-Dakhil. He came from over in the Syrian side, and he became the leader of Spain, and he united the tribes. He united all the people, and he took over the city of Cordoba, and he made Cordoba his capital. Cordoba. Okay? And the city of Cordoba, in the year 1000, you know now is 2000, right? 2010. In the year 1000, the largest city in the world was Cordoba. It had over 1 million people. It had 200,000 houses, 500 masjids, mosques. It had 90 public baths, 50 hospitals. The streets were lit everywhere. They had lights in the streets. For miles, you could go running. Water was flowing. It took Paris and London 700 years before they had this. 700 years before London had lights, before Paris had lights. Cordoba was a lit, beautiful city. You see? What was it based on? It was based on justice. It was based on equality. The Quran and the Sunnah was being practiced by the people. They made their prayers, they paid zakat, they gave to the poor, they established shura, mutual consultation. As long as they did this, they rose in power, to the point where they were the most powerful city in the world at that time. This is a rise in civilization. This is from the city of Granada. This is Qasr al-Hamra, or the Alhambra palace, which is still today. That picture is today. It's still left there today. You can see where the Muslims reached the heights. But now something started to happen. In 976, one of their leaders, whose name was Muhammad ibn Amir, known as Al-Mansur, he built a city called Medina Zahra, and then a palace, a Zahira, was later built. And when these cities were built, they were the biggest, most flourishing cities in the whole world. Along with Cordoba, they were wonders of the world. But the problem that started to develop when they built these cities, this is not the early generation, this is now 200 years afterwards. And there's a famous scholar, his name is Ibn Khaldun, and he wrote a muqaddamah, he wrote an introduction to his history of the world. And in the muqaddamah, he is saying that if you look at people, look at society, it's like a circle. When people are just and honest and fair, they get power in the land. He studied the Muslims especially. He said when the Muslims were establishing Islam, they had power. When they started to leave Islam, and they started to love the dunya, they started to love the world, money, then they started to get weaker and weaker and weaker. And so this is what happened in the time of the Khalifa. He was still a good person, but he made a beautiful building, too beautiful. He started to love the life of this world. And when you love the life of this world too much, you start to lose your power. He took from the poor people to make his palace. And so within a short period of time, his city was destroyed. It was revolution, civil war. See? And today you can go there. This is a picture today from Cordoba, where you can visit and see what is left of Medina Zahra. And this is what happens when you are not establishing justice. And in the north, the Catholic Trinitarians, they started to come back. And they started to seize the territory from the northern sides. Here you can see in the picture, you can see the walls, and you can see what is left of the Medina Zahra. One of the worst things the Muslims did is that there were different leaders in different sections. And sometimes when the Trinitarian force come, one Muslim said, I will fight with you against another Muslim. And when they did this, the Trinitarian said, yes, I will work with you. They destroyed the Muslim, then he destroyed the first one. That is one of the worst possible things, but it happened. Following this, squabbling and fighting over money, tribalism, leaving the Sunnah, they started to lose the territory. They started to lose it. They had to go south. Then they lost the city of Cordoba. And this is where the masjid was. It was one of the most beautiful masjids in the world that was there. And the Christians took it over and they turned it into a cathedral. And inside the cathedral now, these are graves. Inside what used to be the Jamia Masjid of Cordoba. When the Muslims went south, they stayed in a place called Granada. And they stayed in Granada for 250 years. Allah blessed them with a group called Al-Murabitun, who raised them up. After 100 years, the Murabitun became weak and they went down. Then another group came called Al-Muwahidun. They raised them up. After 100 years, they forgot the Sunnah and they went down. And so in the history of Andalusia, you will see when the Muslims are following the Quran and the Sunnah, they are high. When they leave it, they start to go down. You see? Up and down. And this is our lesson. Remember what the Quran is saying. لَقَدْ كَانَ فِي قَصَصِهِمْ إِبْرَةٌ لِأُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. There are lessons for those who will reflect. And you can see here in Alhambra, in this what they call the Court of the Lions, they started to go to extremes. They had so much wealth, they even made lions themselves too. You see, so they started to go to extremes and then they were suppressed. Now, what happened to the Muslims? This is a question that I want to show you, because today we are suffering in many countries. In North America, we are really being tested. It's called Islamophobia. It's where they put Muslims in jail and they make your life difficult. And this is an example for us. Okay? In 1493, you see 1492, let's go back a little bit. The final ruler of Granada, his name was Abu Abdullah. They call him Bu'abdil. They had protected their land for 250 years. They started fighting each other, and the Christian Trinitarian kings, the Catholic king and queen, Ferdinand and Isabella, they said, we will make a treaty with you. If you pay taxes to us, your masjid is safe, your women are safe, your madrasa are safe, just submit to us. Abu Abdullah signed the treaty in 1492. This was a major mistake. In 20 years, they broke the treaty. They destroyed changed all the masjids into churches. They slaughtered the people. They drove the people out. And in 1493, they made what is called the Spanish Inquisition. Because they wanted to get all the Muslims and destroy the Muslims and control them. And so they start asking you, the Inquisition is, if you're not a Catholic, they say, do you believe in the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost? If you say yes, they might let you go. If you say no, if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, if you're Unitarian Christian, they'll burn you at the stake. They light you on fire. After this, even the people who said they were Christians, they started testing them. There's one case of a woman called Elvira, and because she did not eat pork, and she changed her linens on Saturday, they burned her at the stake. Another example is, if you said you was a Christian, but you took a bath on Thursday night, they will burn you at the stake. Does anybody know why? Think about that. You took a bath on Thursday night. Yeah, because Laylatul Jum'ah, right? The Jum'ah starts after Maghrib, right? So if you took a bath, that means you've taken the ghusl for Jum'ah. This is a person who said he was a Christian, but they don't want any Islam left in you. They want no Islam. And so they'll burn you at the stake. And so it is said that 2 million Jewish people, 3 million Muslims were killed during this time. 3 million people. The Muslims they call Moros, Moors. It is the same conquistadors. After they left out of Spain, and they came across Southeast Asia, and they came into the Philippines, they said Moros. They said Moros. Right? That's why you say Moros in Mindanao. You say Moros. These are the conquistadores. This is where they came from. That is the reason why they call you Moros. Because under the Inquisition, the people who were Muslims, they say you are Moors or Moros. It's a Latin word for a person of color. It means you're a colored person. That's what Moros means. Okay? If you were a slave who worked in their house and you were still a Muslim, they would say Mudajjir. Then they started to kill all the Mudajjirs, and the one who is a Christian, but he's a Muslim inside, he is called Morescos. And the Jewish people are called Morenos. You see, Morenos. And the Muslim are called Morescos. These are the people who traveled with Christopher Columbus. They traveled with Vasco da Gama. They traveled with Balboa. They traveled out with the conquistadors. They were working on the boats. These are Morenos and Morescos. Muslims had to do something. The response to oppression for Muslims is jihad, that you should struggle with everything you have. If you cannot do this, then you make hijrah. You make migrations. So the Muslims made migration, and they went to across into Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, even Egypt, Turkey. Hundreds and thousands of Muslims came across from AlAndalus, escaping from this. See? Interesting fatwa. It was made by the Mufti of Wahran, Ahmed Boujuma al-Maghrawi. This is in 1504. Now imagine you are a Muslim, and you went to the Inquisition and you said, okay, I'm a Catholic. Because you're afraid, right? Now you want to practice Islam, but the people think you're a Catholic. How do you practice Islam? The Sheikh, he made a fatwa. He used the example of a famous Muslim family in early Mecca. This family was called Ali Yasir. The father's name was Yasir, the mother's name was Sumayya, and the son's name was Ammar. This is Ali Yasir. They were being tortured in Mecca. And one day the Prophet ﷺ came by them and he said, Sabran ala Yasir, maw'idukum al-Jannah. He said, have patience, family of Yasir, your place will be in paradise. And Sumayya, radiallahu anha, she was the first person to die shaheed for Islam, was the mother. Okay? One day Ammar came to the Prophet ﷺ and he said, I have destroyed myself. And the Prophet said, how did you destroy yourself? He said, I said kalimatul kufr. I said the word of disbelief. He was being tortured so much that he said disbelief. The Prophet said, how is your heart? And he said, my heart was mutma'in bil iman. My heart was strong in faith. So the Prophet said, you're still okay. So what this means is, if you are forced in the worst possible circumstances, the Mufti said, you can still be a Muslim. How do you do that? How do you make salat? Everybody's Catholic, right? How do you make your wudu? The Mufti said, walk down the street and tap the wall, and that's tayammum. You know tayammum? It's dry wudu, right? He said, you walk down the street, tap the wall, that's your tayammum. He said, make salat with your eyes. That's how you make salat. Because if they see you, they'll burn you at the stake, right? So you said, make salat with your eyes. He said, you want to make your zakat, then give somebody a gift, and make niyyah, intention for zakat. If you have to take a ghusl, you know your full bath, the ghusl, he said, make intention and jump in the lake and swim. That's your ghusl. You want to get married, you have to marry in the Catholic Church. Then, in the darkness of night, you make nikah. Janaza, you have to bury like a Christian. In the darkness of night, make janaza prayer for the person who died. This is the situation the Muslims were in. It is the worst possible thing that could ever happen. We have never experienced anything on this level. 3 million people died. Millions more had to live as slaves, as morescos. They did not know their identity. And the years went by. They traveled to different parts of the world. And the years went by underneath this rule. The question is, could Islam and the spirit of Ramadan and the spirit of fasting, could it ever return to these lands? Do you think that's possible? Totally wiped out. If you read Spanish history now, if you go to the school in Spain, they don't even tell you about the Muslim presence in Spain. Muslims were in Spain for over 781 years. They had power in Spain. 781 years is a long time. That's a long time. Cordoba, remember, it was the largest city in the world in the year 1000. Great sciences and so many things were being done. And then the Inquisition came, and then they were destroyed. They went down to the lowest possible point. Could Islam return by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now in Granada, there is a masjid there. The Spanish people living in the Andalusian section of Spain, when the Spanish government now has announced it will be a democratic government, and so they allowed the people to look to their history. When the Andalusian people look in their history, they see Islam. And so by the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Spanish people today are coming back into Islam. Here is the masjid, right next to the place that was turned into a cathedral. That is a new masjid that was built there in Spain. This is the masjid now in Granada. And alhamdulillah, Juma this is right now. Yeah, this is the main one. The Juma Salat is in Arabic and Spanish. And it shows that there is no power, there's no glory except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the symbol of the Granada, of the Muslims of Spain. It says, وَلَا غَالِبَ إِلَّا اللَّهِ. Nobody can conquer you, nobody can completely control you except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the lessons we get out of this, as Allah Azza wa Jal has told us, فَقْصُصِ الْقَصَصِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Tell them the stories so that they will reflect. What we learn about the history here is that when the Muslims entered the lands and they established justice, they established equality, they did not force the Christians to become Muslim, they did not force the Jewish people, they lived side by side, they used their knowledge in order to make the society great. They used the study of the Quran to study science, to study all the different sciences that people need. The society had taxes that were not too heavy on the people. The society had a type of freedom in it. The Quran was practiced. The king, the rulers of Islam, when the rulers were ruling in justice, they would walk amongst the people like average people. When this is done, then Allah promised us to give us authority in the land. But when the rulers became greedy, and they started building huge buildings, and they go away from Quran and Sunnah, and it's Arab versus non-Arab, light skin versus dark skin, this one against that one, then Allah takes the power away. This is Sunnatullah. This is the way of Allah in His creation. These are thawabit for the changing of society. And so I leave you with Allah's words, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change that which is in ourselves. We have the ability to change today. Our ummah can be the leaders of the world, or they will be in the back of the world. Which direction we will follow, it is up to us. If we do not, then Allah has promised that He will bring another people. He will replace us and bring another people who submit to Him, who are humble to Him, and who are strong against evil and disbelief. I leave you with these thoughts, and I ask Allah to have mercy on me and you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We want to open up the floor for some feedback, some questions maybe that anybody may have. Yes? The Vandals. The Vandals were the original people of Spain and Portugal. The original people were called Vandals. They were Germanic Gothic people who came into the region. Yeah, so that's who they are. So now, of course, they've mixed with many different peoples, but they were the original people. So therefore, Vandals, the name was called Vandalusia, and then they changed in Arabic to Andalusia or AlAndalus. That's where the name came from. But they're originally a Germanic type of tribe. Now, any questions anybody has? Yes, bro. Okay, in terms of today, I have shown you what the principles are, and it's clear where Muslims are. We have a chance to rise high, or we will continue to go down. The choice is on us now. Everything is in place. The choice is on Muslims. Which direction will we go? Unitarians. The Unitarians, after 325 AD, Constantine, he killed a leader called Arius, and he killed millions of them. And the ones that were left, most of them became Muslims. They were living in Palestine, Egypt, Libya, North Africa. Most of them eventually became Muslims. When you say Unitarian today in United States or in Europe, it's not the same Unitarian. It's not the same one. So those original Unitarians, we don't really know much about them today. The problem is now with these groups, you have to see what their Aqidah is. If the Aqidah is Trinity, then they follow the Catholic Church. Like the Protestants, they broke away from the Catholics, right? Protestants. They protested. But they kept the same faith. They just changed leadership. So you need to see, the Unitarians believed that Jesus was a man. He was a prophet. There's only one God. That was the Unitarian Christians. And they were all over the Christian world before 325. After that time, they were being killed. You see? So in Christianity, you had Unitarians and Trinitarians. But when the Roman Church became Trinitarian under Constantine, anyone who did not believe, they will kill you. So this is the problem that they faced all over the world. But most of them eventually they became Muslims. Because Islam was the final testament. And when they saw Islam, they said, this is our answer. We were waiting for this to come. If you look at the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, you see when he traveled on the road, there was a monk he met, Buhaira. He met a monk on the road, and then Mistora. A couple times in the journeys he met these monks. There were people who believed in one God. There were even some Hunafa people who lived in Mecca. So there are some people around the world who still kept this belief, but they were in small numbers. And when Islam came, they eventually became Muslim because it was clear that this was the final message that came from after the time of Jesus. Yes, at that time there was also in Iraq, they made a study of cities in the year 1000. It came in Newsweek magazine in the year, you go back to the year 2000, Newsweek. And they said, what is the 10 largest cities in the world today and in the year 1000? And I looked at the thing, 6 of them were Muslim cities. 6. And they included also Isfahan and Al-Qahira, Cairo, and Baghdad, of course Baghdad, and so there were 6 of the major cities. Yeah.
They have roads and electricity.
Yeah, they had, especially Baghdad, Cairo, they had lighted streets, running water. Yeah. 700 years. Not electricity. They didn't use electricity though. They used oil. They had oil in the lights. Yeah. But alhamdulillah, the street was lit. And the water was running. Imagine this. And if you go to Granada today, the same system for running water that they used 1,000 years ago, they use it today. Same one. They just put cement over it and stuff. But it's the same system. That's how good they were in terms of their math, Islam and Christianity. The difference is, in the time of the Council of Nicaea, 325 AD, right? Constantine was the Roman emperor. So we gathered together all of the Christians at that time, the leaders. You had some Christians who believe in the Trinity, three, and there's some Christians who believe in one God, Unitarians. These people who believe in one God, they were the Muslims of their times. You could call them Muslims before Muhammad. They are the Muslims. They are the Muslims before Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because Islam only means istislam. It only means to submit to Allah. And Allah says in Surah An-Nahl, وَلَقَدْ بَعَثْنَا فِي كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ رَسُولًا أَنْ يَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ وَاجْتَنِبُوا الطَّاغُوتَ. We have sent to every nation a prophet, that they believe in one God and they stay away from false deities. So there were Muslims in all the countries. In other words, people who believe in one God. But in the last message, with the Quran coming now, the final last testament, once the people hear the last testament, then they should naturally become Muslims. They should follow the Quran, because that is the last book that is sent. But to be Muslim does not mean from the Middle East, Arab. No. You can be African, you can be Asian, you can be from America, you can be from anywhere. Right? But the last message is the Quran itself, which is the final testament sent to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, yes, brother. After the Inquisition, everybody had to be Catholic. But the Moriscos people, they kept their identity inside. Now when you go to AlAndalus, you see the people, he looks like somebody, like you see this one, he looks like a Yemeni. You can see he's Yemeni, this one is a Yemeni. But he's Spanish, right? So if he goes back 200 years, he will see his family came from Yemen. But because of the Inquisition, he had to say he's Catholic. You see, so now these people are the ones who are coming into Islam now. Every week, they take Shahada. Every week, they're taking Shahada in Spanish, in the masjid. Every week. Yeah. So this shows us now, under the most difficult circumstances, we can still keep our Islam, and inshallah, we can come back into Islam as well. Now, yes, brother. So it shows you that once we follow Islam, you see, just because you're Muslim, don't think that you will get everything. Iman is al-qawlu bil-lisan, wa-tasdeeq bil-qalb, wal-amal bil-jawarih. You say it with your mouth, and your heart confirms it, and then your limbs, you practice Islam. So if you say you're Muslim and you don't practice, then you're not really Muslim. Allah will not help you. If we fully practice Islam, then inshallah, in tansurullah yansurkum wa yuthabbit aqdamakum. If you help Allah, He will help you and give you victory, and He will make your feet strong.